This is the Awkward GM Corbin, and today we will be covering the most disturbing and grim dark bloodlines of Strange Shades Mekhet. I'm not covering everything in this book, but what you need to know as an overview is that there are 7 bloodlines, 5 of which are being updated from 1st edition to 2nd edition. There are 2 new bloodlines, there are 4 shadow cults, there are new masks, dirges, devotions, merits, and banes, as well as a new option for playing hollow Mekhets. You also have 2 ghoul families and 2 new monster types. If you'd like to support the channel, please take a look at the links below for Warlock Sanctum Games. They are the sponsor for this video. This is your trigger warning for memory loss, abusive relationships, and self-harm. Viewer discretion is advised. First up, we have the Csalad. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, because I feel like Czar is kind of like the first part of the name. Otherwise, they're just called Salad. But they're also known as the Stone Sirens, and they are city-dwelling vampires who use blood sorcery to manipulate their territory and those within it. They gain the discipline Lithopedia, which is their bloodline gift. It is blood sorcery that affects the user's territory or those within their territory. It extends their predatory aura over the territory, and they can sense non-obfuscated trespassers in said territory. They can also sense the general emotional state of the territory and add lithopedia dots to their empathy rolls within the territory. Man, there's also a lot that I have just like listed right here, so please go through that. That's a lot more detail than I can say in this sentence. Their bloodline curse is the Civic Curse, which means resting anywhere but their own personal territory causes them to become lethargic. I've got to say the Stone Sires are probably really high up there on my list of vampire bloodlines I'd like to try out. Just being able to control an entire territory with blood sorcery is very potent. You would really like to see this with someone who has a large swath of territory like a prince, but it could probably work out if you have a large domain for your player group. Though honestly, what it might end up being is that you just have like a single city block and you keep inviting people there so that you can like have one up on them. As far as NPCs go, I would totally run NPCs as Stone Sires. They work out very well, and the players are more likely to go into someone else's territory than to trick people into coming to their own. However, that is a strategy you should be aware of. Next up, we have the Kuufukuji, or also known as the Celibates. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They are vampires who can go without feeding for a long period of time through their fasting techniques. They gain the discipline Resilience, and they also have the bloodline gift of Shahahi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a merit that gives them more bonuses for abstaining from feeding. They are able to identify and calm or worsen frenzy. They can resist frenzy if they perform self-harm on themselves. They can also increase their physical attributes that way. They can also lash out to stop another vampire from frenzying. And they can replace Vitae with Temptation for powering their abilities. Temptation is a resource that gets generated from them fasting, as far as I can tell. Their bloodline curse is the Ascetic Curse, which means drinking too much Vitae in a night can turn them bestial until they abstain from feeding again. Celibates aren't my favorite bloodline in this book. Honestly, I could see them being used as an NPC antagonist as part of the 7 Covenant. The 7 Covenant being the vampire versus vampire covenant that tries to push away from actually being a vampire and kill off all the vampires. I would not want to play as a celibate for myself, but that's just because I don't like the aspect of turning away from vampirism, at least not in the way that you're hurting yourself in order to do that. The Leandros, or Heartbreakers, are vampires who get attached to a single mortal to the extent that it is toxic to the mortal's life and relationships. They replace celerity with majesty and vigor, and they gain a bunch of new devotions, which can increase their impression to perfect. They can temporarily resist sunlight. They can appear as a victim's perfect soulmate. And when they become soulmates with a mortal, they gain bonuses, but at the cost of damaging the mortal's relationships with friends and family. They have the Infatuated Curse, which is if they feed from a victim, they risk that victim becoming the only vessel they can get vitae from. If this hasn't happened, they have the Invitation Bane. The Leandros are what you get when you mix a Mekhet with a Deva. They even have the same bloodline curse as the Deva for the most part, or at least they're very similar. I don't think I would run them as a player character. The idea that you have a toxic relationship with a mortal, that you're basically gaining a lot of benefits by being around this single person at the detriment of that person's life, is something I really don't want to explore in my own characters. However, for an NPC or an antagonist, I really think this could work out, especially if it's in a game where one of the player character's touchstones is being the victim of a Leandros. And if the players are vampires, they might have to negotiate with the Leandros, or if there's nothing that can be done, they need to figure out a way of getting him out of the city or away from their touchstone. The Mnemosyne, or Mind-Thieves, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, are vampires who can steal memories from feeding. They also gain the Dominate discipline, and they have the Eidetic memory merit for free. Additionally, they have new devotions, such as bottling memories and emotions. They can resist mind manipulation, such as via alcohol and obfuscate, though a clash of wills still apply. They can steal memories from their victims that they feed from, and they can restore memories to victims that they feed from. So you could technically take the memory of someone who's, say, a serial killer and put it into an innocent person, and that innocent person thinks they're now a serial killer, or at least that they committed the crime. Their bloodline curse is the Gestalt curse. When feeding, they risk incorporating their victims' memories into their own. I would really like to see what the Mind-Thieves do when they come across a mummy. That's because mummies have a memory trait, and it goes up as they have awoken. And the more memory they have, the more likely they are to lose power. And I wonder if a mind thief could give a mummy a fake memory, and that would increase their memory stat. Of course, there's no mechanic for this right now, but I think it's up to the storyteller's discretion. As far as me running these as NPCs, the verdict is I really like these guys as NPCs. They seem like they are very capable and an interesting concept to run with. As far as playing them as a player character, I think I could run them as a player character, but they're not on the top of the list of bloodlines that I like in this book. They're probably around the middle somewhere, maybe the third favorite of mine, maybe fourth. Norvegi, or the Knives, are vampires that can shoot out crystallized blood. They replace Obfuscate with the Protean and Vigor disciplines. They also get the Bloodworking bloodline gift. This allows them to use new Protean aspects that are kind of alien-like, and they gain new devotions as well, such as being able to turn a ghoul into what is called a Blood Trail monster. With the Blood Trail, you can use your Protean dots to buff up their physical attributes. You can also fire razor-sharp darts of vitae from your body, and you can explode into a crystallized vitae explosion. I mean, from your body, not your actual body exploding into blood. That would mean your character is dead. But you can also feed from victims via these little tiny hairs on your skin instead of using fangs, so it makes it easier to feed discreetly. Their bloodline curse is the Curse of Glamour. Their skin appears to have something writhing underneath it. If a Norvegi neonate hasn't dropped to Humanity 6, they start with the Fangless Bane instead. The Norvegi are what I would call a combination of Mekhet and Gangrel. Gangrels use the Protean discipline to turn into animals, whereas this Mekhet bloodline turns into alien-like creatures, sort of like eldritch horrors, or more into the body horror aspect of vampirism. Now, I think I would run these as NPCs. They definitely sound like they would be scary to meet in a corridor, and they sound similar, but not quite as much as the Vampire Masquerade clan called the Tziki, I think? Tzimitzzi? It's hard for me to remember that because I've only ever played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and they actually don't say that clan name, even though you fight one. So I would run them as NPCs, but as a player character, this is sort of like another middle of the road type bloodline that I could see myself running, but there's nothing that calls to me with this. It's sort of like, man, do I want to use like this crystallized vitae as a weapon? Yes, I do. So I'll make a character that does that. I haven't gone through the lore as much with these ones because just the concept of them is so intriguing to me. The Qedesha, or the parents, are vampires that are really attached to their touchstones. They gain the Majesty discipline, and they also gain the bloodline gift Embrocation. The Qedesha anoints multiple people with blood, forming a mystical relationship with them. All of the users anointed are treated as a single touchstone to the vampire. They can use aspects and majesty on them from a vast distance. They can sense the anointed's health, injuries, and current level of fear. They can take on wounds for an anointed to heal them, and they can transfer willpower to anointed. Their bloodline curse is the Fretful Curse. They must defend a touchstone or an anointed after a few nights or become guilty. It's hard for me to talk about the Qedesha without comparing it to the Leandros. The Qedesha have one touchstone that is multiple people, whereas the Leandros gets attached to a single person. Now, the Qedesha are kind of like helicopter parents or mother hens, depending on if you want to go in the negative route or the positive route. Now, I would definitely run these as NPC antagonists because I've run stuff like this previously for some of my players where I had a parental figure who was doing terrible things to the player character, but doing it from a place of caring. So they were like setting up crises for that player character in order for the player character to be brought up higher in the vampire ranks. In this case, I could see a Qedesha setting up situations where their touchstones are in danger just to save them, to sort of tick off the Fretful Curse requirement that they have, where they have to defend their touchstone. And if they don't do it every few days, they gain the guilty condition instead. The reason for that is your touchstone is not going to be in danger 24/7, so you're going to have to do something bad to get them in danger so that you can save them and justify yourself being there. Would I play Qedesha? No, I don't think so. I do like the concept of them having a group of mortal touchstones that they can transfer willpower to or give bonuses to, but I don't think it's something for me. I feel like I get a lot from being the storyteller in the games and organizing the players that way, and I don't want to have sort of like this simulation of me organizing the touchstones in game. However, I just had a good concept where I could play a Qedesha that is the dungeon master in a D&D game, and all their anointed are players within that group. Feel free to steal that idea. I think that's a good one. Now we have the Connected, also known as IT. They are answering the question of what if a hacker could use their own blood to control machines? The answer, really awesome things. They gain the discipline interface, which is their bloodline gift. It is a discipline that allows the connected to command electronic devices with just their voice. They can repair and turn off electronic devices, basically turning them into temporary ghoul-like entities. They can curse a target to have electronics fail whenever they use them. They can cause electronics to go haywire near them and attack people. And the user can create a domain where they can know every electronic device within it, as well as teleport to that device via Wi-Fi. Their bloodline curse is the Anonymous Curse. Wonder why it's called the Anonymous Curse. It's not like there's a hacker group called Anonymous. The connected gets distracted in large crowds of people. I really like the connected in that they take the concept of being able to create a ghoul from a person and apply it to electronic devices. So you can essentially ghoul a computer or a car, and now you have a car that you can control with your voice. That being said, I would totally run these as NPCs. I'm reminded of a Stephen King movie. I can't remember the title, but basically machinery just sort of starts to kill people. Like there's a person with like a headset, and the headset like causes the person to have like an aneurysm and stuff like that. And I could see that as being a very good haunted house type story to run for my players. Additionally, I would totally run this as a player character. My first character I ever ran in any TTRPG was a hacker, so it makes sense that I would fall into this. And I just love the concept overall. Top of my list of Bloodlines I'd love to play right now so far. If you like this video, please think about sending a couple bucks my way in my Ko-fi account. Link in the description below. Additionally, you could just like the video. That helps out a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.